By the autumn of 1944, Japan was a nation running on fragments of hope. 3 years of war had drained its lifeblood. Cities stood in ruins, fleets lay beneath the waves, and the skies that once carried imperial planes now belonged to the enemy. In the villages of Kyushu, young men were called up faster than the factories could build aircraft for them. Many had never even seen combat before being told they would die in it. They spoke quietly of duty and destiny, words learned from posters and radio broadcasts that promised glory in sacrifice. One of them was Ensign Masao Kawaguchi, a 23-year-old pilot from Kagoshima. Before the war, he had studied engineering at Kyushu Imperial University, a quiet student who dreamed of designing planes that could touch the clouds. He was engaged to a local girl named Sachiko Arai, who worked in her family's shop near the harbor. On the morning he left for training, she handed him a small bracelet woven from silk and a few strands of her hair. "If you wear this," she told him softly, "I'll know you're safe." Masao promised to return with it still around his wrist. Their letters over the next 3 years were simple, censored, and filled with small hopes: the smell of the ocean after rain, the cherry blossoms near her home, the idea of building a red-roofed house by the water when peace returned. But in late 1944, the tone of those letters changed. Japan's empire was collapsing. American forces had landed in the Philippines, threatening to cut off vital supply lines and bring the war to the homeland's doorstep. Fuel was scarce. Aircraft were few. Commanders knew they could not win by numbers alone. It was then that Admiral Takejiro Onishi proposed something new, a weapon born not of machines, but of men's resolve. Pilots would fly their bomb-laden planes directly into enemy ships. The plan was desperate, brutal, and final. They called it Tokotai, meaning Special Attack Units. In English, the word would become known as Kamikaze. Masao received orders to report to Chiran Air Base in southern Kyushu, a place that would become known as the cradle of the Kamikaze. There, wooden barracks lined the airfield. Cherry trees stood silent beside the runways. Inside, young pilots talked quietly over tea, laughed to mask fear, and wrote letters they would never see answered. The base commander addressed them one evening. "You have been chosen to protect the empire's future. The eyes of the emperor are upon you. Your spirits will live forever in the hearts of our people." Some of the men nodded. Others stared at their hands. They knew what this meant. There would be no return flight. Masao sat on his bunk that night, writing to Sachiko by the flicker of a lantern. "Dearest Sachiko, I am well. The air here smells of home, of Kagoshima's fields after rain. I have received a new duty. It may take me far away. But do not worry. The stars above me are the same ones you see. Look at them sometimes, and think of me there." He folded the paper carefully and placed it in his chest pocket. Outside, the wind rustled through the cherry trees. Planes waited in the hangars like shadows, silent and patient. Masao often sat beside his aircraft after hours, running his fingers along the fuselage, as if memorizing every curve. "It's strange," he once said to a friend. "We spend so long learning to fly, and now we will use that gift to die." His friend said nothing. There were no words left for what lay ahead.
The days at Chiran passed with a strange calm. Pilots rose at dawn, ate rice and pickled vegetables, then trained until sunset. Each hour was filled with repetition, takeoffs, landings, formation drills, though many knew they would never need to land again. In the evenings, they gathered around a small radio, listening to static-filled broadcasts about battles far away. The reports were always the same. Our forces fought bravely, the enemy suffered heavy losses, but no one believed them anymore. They could see the truth in the faces of their superiors, in the thin meals, and in the constant stream of funerals. Masao spent most of his nights writing, sometimes letters to his parents, sometimes to Sachiko. He no longer spoke of the future, only of gratitude, of memories, and of the things left unsaid. Sachiko, do you remember the summer festival before the war? You wore a blue yukata with white flowers. You said the fireworks looked like stars falling into the sea. When I fly, I will remember that night, and I will carry that sky with me. On November 3rd, 1944, a list appeared on the blackboard in the command hut. 8 names written in chalk. Masao's was among them. His mission, a direct attack on enemy carriers near Leyte Gulf. His plane would carry a 250-kilogram bomb, fused to detonate on impact. That evening, the pilots gathered for their final dinner. There was sake, rare and precious, poured by their commanding officer. He told them they were the flowers of Japan, blooming for a single moment before scattering their petals upon the sea. Laughter echoed through the mess hall, nervous and hollow. Some joked loudly, others sat silently, eyes fixed on the floor. Masao smiled once or twice, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Somewhere beyond the dark horizon, where Sachiko's letters still waited unopened in a wooden box. After the meal, he walked alone to the edge of the airfield. The night was cold, the stars sharp and clear. He thought of the red-roofed house they had dreamed of, the one with lilies growing beside the porch. He took a small notebook from his pocket and began to write his last letter. Dearest Sachiko, when you read this, I will be far from you, flying toward my duty. I am not afraid, only sorrowful that I cannot keep my promise. I wanted to grow old beside you, to see your smile every morning, but now I will see it only in my mind. Do not mourn me, Sachiko. Remember me as I was, the man who laughed too softly, who loved the sea, who wanted nothing more than your happiness. Live your life freely, and when you look at the sky, think of me, flying there, watching over you. He closed the notebook, pressed it to his chest, and whispered, I will not fail. Later that night, Masao returned to the barracks. Some of the men were sleeping. Others were quietly writing or staring at photographs of home. The room was heavy with unspoken words. A friend leaned over from the next bunk. Masao, he asked, are you ready? Masao looked at him and smiled faintly. I don't think anyone ever is. He turned out the lamp and lay awake for a long time, listening to the wind outside. Every sound, the creak of the barracks, the distant hum of engines, felt like the heartbeat of a world that would soon forget them. At dawn, he rose, folded his blanket neatly, and put on his flight uniform. Around his wrist, the silk bracelet still shone faintly in the pale light.
Morning came cold and pale. A thin mist rolled across the airfield at Chiran, softening the outlines of the planes waiting silently along the runway. Mechanics moved without speaking, their breath visible in the dawn air. From the barracks, the young pilots emerged one by one, buttoning their flight suits, their faces calm but distant, men who had already said their goodbyes in silence. Masao carried his flight helmet in his left hand, his small notebook tucked into the pocket over his heart. Around his wrist, the silk bracelet Sachiko had given him still held fast, a reminder of another world, the scent of her hair, the laughter under cherry blossoms, the warmth of a hand he would never hold again. At the hangar, his plane waited. A Mitsubishi Zero, light green, its metal skin dulled by weeks of hard use. Beneath its wings was bolted a single 250-kilogram bomb, its surface painted with white kanji characters, 7 lives for the Emperor. Before climbing in, Masao bowed deeply toward the south, the direction of his hometown, and beyond it, the open sea. He whispered a quiet prayer, not for victory, but for peace. A photographer from the base motioned for the men to gather for one final picture. They lined up before their planes, smiling faintly, some flashing the peace sign, a strange, almost playful gesture that belied the gravity of the moment. Masao's smile was soft and calm. Later, that photograph would hang in the Chiton Peace Museum, his eyes fixed forever on some distant horizon. The engines roared to life. The sound rolled through the valley like thunder. As the sun rose, the mist began to lift, and the planes shimmered in the golden light. Ground crews stood at attention. Some bowed deeply. Others turned away, unable to watch. Masao's voice crackled over the radio. "This is Kawaguchi. I am taking off." His Zero moved down the runway, wheels bumping softly over the dirt. For a moment, it seemed to hesitate, then lifted gracefully into the air. Behind him, 7 others followed, their formation climbing steadily toward the clouds. Below, the cherry trees stirred in the wind, scattering petals across the runway like snow. As they gained altitude, Japan fell away beneath them, mountains, rivers, and the glimmering coastline fading into a haze of morning light. For the first time in months, Masao felt a strange peace. The engine's steady hum was like a heartbeat, each vibration a reminder that he was still alive, if only for a little while longer. He looked toward the east, where the sun broke through the clouds in bands of gold and crimson. It reminded him of the flag painted on his plane's tail, the rising sun that had sent them to war, now glowing with quiet indifference. He reached into his pocket, feeling the folded pages of Sachiko's last letter. "Masao, wherever you go, I will be with you. Promise me you'll look at the sea one last time, that you'll remember it as we saw it that summer, calm and endless." He smiled faintly. The sea, yes, he would see it soon. Hours passed. The squadron flew low over the ocean, waves glinting below like shards of glass. Over the radio, voices came and went, check-ins, coordinates, fragments of prayer. Then a call from the lead pilot. "Enemy fleet in sight." Masao's heartbeat quickened. Ahead the horizon shimmered with faint dots, ships, carriers, destroyers, cruisers, the gray leviathans of the U.S. Navy, their decks alive with planes preparing to launch. He could see the faint bursts of anti-aircraft fire blooming around them, black flowers rising into the sky. The radio crackled again. "For the Emperor, for Japan." Masao lowered his goggles. The wind howled against the cockpit. His fingers tightened on the controls. He felt no anger, no hate, only a deep aching longing to hold Sachiko's hand again, to see the cherry blossoms one more time. "Sachiko," he whispered, "forgive me." He pushed the throttle forward. The engine screamed. The world narrowed to a tunnel of smoke and light. The ocean below gleamed like hammered steel. Anti-aircraft bursts bloomed all around, black clouds tearing the air. Masao's Zero shuddered from the shockwaves, the wings trembling but holding firm. He could see the enemy fleet clearly now, rows of gray ships cutting through the sea, each one bristling with guns that spat fire into the sky. Tracer rounds streaked past him like burning threads. One bullet grazed the fuselage, another shattered the canopy's edge. Masao's breath came slow and steady. He could hear his own heartbeat louder than the engine.
He thought of home, of the smell of Sachiko's hair when she leaned close, of her hands cupping his face the day he left, of the faint sound of waves breaking on the Kagoshima shore. He whispered to himself, "I will fly straight." A flash of memory crossed his mind. Sachiko, beneath the cherry trees, her blue yukata fluttering in the wind. He remembered her laughing softly, saying, "You always look like you're listening to the sky." He smiled. Maybe now I finally am. The ship below loomed larger, a U.S. escort carrier surrounded by smoke and chaos. Masao steadied the plane, gripping the stick with both hands. The engine howled, the ocean rushed up to meet him. He closed his eyes, and in that instant he was home again. The explosion tore through the sea, a column of fire and water rising into the sky. On the deck of the carrier, sailors shouted, pointing toward the wreckage of a single aircraft. In the chaos, no one knew his name. To them, he was just another flash of light in a long and endless war. But far away, in a small village near Kagoshima, a letter was making its way home. It arrived weeks later, carried by a young soldier who had survived the airbase bombardment. The envelope was worn, smudged with fingerprints and ash. On the front, in neat handwriting, it read, "To Miss Sachiko Arai, Kagoshima Prefecture." She recognized it instantly. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were 2 pages, Masao's final words. "Dearest Sachiko, when this letter reaches you, I will have already departed. I do not wish for you to cry, for tears cannot reach the sky. I leave this world without regret, because I have known love. That is enough for any man. Please live, grow old, see the blossoms I cannot. When you feel the wind, think of me. I will be in it, free, light, and smiling. You have given me the greatest gift, to love without end. Until we meet again. Masao." Sachiko pressed the letter to her chest and wept silently. Not the wild, breaking kind of sorrow, but a deep and quiet ache that would last a lifetime. That night, she walked down to the shoreline where they had once sat together. The tide rolled in softly, glowing beneath the moon. She whispered into the wind, "You kept your promise. You saw the sea one last time." In the distance, the waves shimmered as if answering her. She closed her eyes, and in that moment, she could almost hear the low hum of an engine far above, fading, then gone.
Years passed. The war ended, leaving Japan in ashes. Cities lay broken, and the sky that once roared with engines was silent at last. For many, victory or defeat no longer mattered, only survival, and the memories that refused to fade. Sachiko continued to live in Kagoshima. She never married. Every spring, she visited the temple near the coast to place flowers beneath a small wooden plaque that bore Masao's name. She never spoke much of him, but those who knew her said she smiled when she saw the cherry blossoms fall, as though each drifting petal carried a memory of their short, perfect time together. In 1952, when Chiran Air Base was transformed into a peace museum, the families of the fallen were invited to contribute photographs and letters. Sachiko donated Masao's final letter and the silk bracelet she had made all those years ago. They were placed in a glass case beside his photograph. A young man in uniform, eyes calm, smile faint and gentle. Visitors still stop there, even now. They lean in to read his words, the ink faded but clear. Please live, grow old, See the blossoms, I cannot. Many leave small paper cranes or single flowers. Some wipe away tears. Historians later described Masao Kawaguchi's letter as one of the most poignant artifacts of the Toko missions, a glimpse into the quiet humanity that existed beneath the machinery of war. His story, and others like it, challenged the simple image of the kamikaze as fanatics. They were, in truth, sons, brothers, and lovers. Young men trapped in a time that demanded they trade their lives for honor. Masao's letter has since been translated into several languages, shared in classrooms, museums, and documentaries around the world. To some, it is a symbol of devotion. To others, a warning of what blind duty can demand from the young. But to Sachiko, it remained something simpler. A love letter. When she grew old, she often sat by the sea, looking out toward the horizon where the sky met the water. "He flew that way," she would say softly, "and I think the wind still carries him." She passed away quietly in her sleep one spring morning. In her room, beside her bed, the caretakers found a single keepsake, a small notebook, its cover worn smooth with time. Inside was Masao's photograph, folded neatly beside a pressed cherry blossom. And written in her own handwriting, beneath his picture, were 4 words. He kept his promise. Today, at Chiran, visitors still walk through the museum's corridors in silence. Outside, the cherry trees bloom each year, their petals scattering over the runways where men once took off toward the sea. The air smells of rain and spring, the same scent Masao once described in his letters. The museum guide often ends each tour with a quiet phrase that hangs in the air like an echo. They did not fly for glory. They flew because they believed they must, and because they loved what they were leaving behind. As the sun sets behind the hills of Chiran, the wind stirs through the blossoms again, carrying with it the faintest whisper. "Do not mourn me, Sachiko. Remember me as I was, free in the sky." And somewhere, beyond time, beyond war, beyond sorrow, 2 souls meet once more beneath an endless sky of peace.